We live in an era obsessed with intangible assets. We track the stock market every second of the day. We obsess over the price of Bitcoin. We build our futures on data in the cloud. But beneath this layer of digital abstraction lies the most fundamental reality of human existence. We have to eat. Food is the ultimate resource. It is more critical than oil, more valuable than gold, and more strategic than data. You can survive without the internet. You cannot survive without calories. Whoever controls the food supply controls the population. It is the oldest rule of political power, dating back to the grain silos of ancient Egypt and Rome. For most of American history, this power was decentralized. The Jeffersonian ideal of the yeoman farmer, independent, self-sufficient, and numerous, was the backbone of the nation. As recently as 1935, there were nearly 7 million farms in the United States. Today, that number has plummeted to under 2 million, and it is falling fast. We are currently witnessing a quiet conquest of the American soil. While the public is distracted by culture wars and political circus, a massive transfer of hard assets is taking place. The land is moving from the hands of families who have worked it for generations into the portfolios of billionaires, hedge funds, and sovereign wealth funds. The public face of this trend is Bill Gates. In a relatively short period, the tech mogul has become the single largest private owner of farmland in the United States, amassing over 270,000 acres across 18 states. When asked why, his team gives sterile corporate answers. They talk about investment diversification. They talk about the long-term stability of land as an asset class. And they are right. Farmland has historically outperformed the S&P 500 with less volatility. It is a smart place to park billions of dollars that need to be protected from inflation. But to view this solely as a financial investment is naive. When an individual with the global influence and specific policy agenda of Bill Gates gains control over a significant portion of a nation's food-producing capacity, it ceases to be just business. It becomes geopolitics. Gates is not just a passive landlord. He is a vocal advocate for a radical transformation of the global food system. He heavily invests in alternative proteins, lab-grown meat, and genetically modified crops designed to align with specific climate goals. His land ownership gives him the power to implement these ideas on a massive scale. He is not just buying land, he's buying the ability to dictate what is grown on that land and how it is grown. It is the difference between having an opinion on the future of food and owning the future of food. Gates is the most famous example, but he is not alone. He is the tip of an institutional spear. Pension funds, university endowments, and massive asset managers like BlackRock and Vanguard are all aggressively moving into the farmland space. They see what is coming. They see a world with a growing population and a shrinking amount of arable land. They see water scarcity. They see geopolitical instability disrupting global supply chains. In that world, the person who owns the productive soil holds the ultimate trump card. This institutional rush is pricing real farmers out of the market. A young family looking to buy their first farm, or an established farmer looking to expand, cannot compete with the unlimited capital of a Wall Street firm. They are showing up to an auction with a mortgage pre-approval. The hedge fund is showing up with an all-cash offer that is 30% over market value. This is creating a new feudalism. The people who work the land no longer own it. They are becoming tenant farmers, sharecroppers on land owned by distant corporate overlords who care only about the quarterly yield, not the health of the soil or the community that depends on it. The connection between the people and the land is being severed. The local knowledge, the generational stewardship, the resilience of a decentralized system, it is all being replaced by a centralized, financialized model of resource extraction. We have already seen the dangers of this centralization in other sectors. We saw what happened to American manufacturing when it was consolidated and outsourced. We saw what happened to local retail when Walmart and Amazon crushed Main Street. Now that same logic is being applied to our food. We are building a food system that is efficient, but incredibly fragile. A system relying on massive monocultures, complex global supply chains, and just-in-time delivery is vulnerable to shocks. A single cyber attack, a single pandemic, a single geopolitical conflict can empty grocery store shelves in days. If the consolidation of land in the US is the quiet phase of this conquest, the events in Europe are the loud, violent phase. We must look to the Netherlands to understand the endgame of the regulatory war on independent farming. The Netherlands is a tiny country, but it is an agricultural giant. It is the second largest exporter of agricultural products in the world, behind only the United States. Its farmers are among the most efficient, innovative, and productive on the planet. Yet their own government has declared war on them. Under the banner of European Union climate directives, specifically regarding nitrogen emissions, the Dutch government has unveiled plans that would require slashing livestock herds by up to 50% and forcing thousands of farmers off their land. The government has been blunt. They have told farmers that it is not possible for all farmers to continue their business. They have offered buyouts, but with a threat attached. If you don't sell voluntarily, We will expropriate your land. This triggered massive protests. We saw images of tractors blocking highways, farmers spraying manure on government buildings, police firing live ammunition at protesters. The media portrayed this as a battle over environmental policy. But to the farmers, it was a battle for survival. The central issue is nitrogen, a byproduct of fertilizer and livestock waste. There's no dispute that industrial agriculture creates environmental challenges, but the government's response, the targeted destruction of the most productive sector of their economy, seems disproportionate to the problem. Critics argue that nitrogen is a pretext. The real goal is land grab. The Netherlands is densely populated and faces a severe housing crisis. The government needs land to build housing and infrastructure to meet the demands of a growing population and mass migration. By declaring a nitrogen crisis and blaming it on farmers, they create a legal and moral justification for seizing agricultural land. It is an eminent domain, taking hidden behind the shield of environmentalism. Furthermore, the land is needed for other purposes that align with the elite agenda. There are plans to turn vast swaths of productive farmland into rewilded nature reserves to meet international biodiversity targets. So, you have a situation where highly productive food-producing land is being taken out of production to build condos and nature parks in the middle of a global food inflation crisis. It defies economic logic, unless the goal is not food security, but something else. This is not just a Dutch problem. It is a pilot program for a global agenda. Similar policies are being pushed in Ireland, in Canada, and are making their way to the United States. In Canada, the government is pushing for a 30% reduction in emissions from fertilizer by 2030. Farmers have warned that this will inevitably lead to lower yields and higher food prices. When you use less fertilizer, you grow less food. It is basic agronomy. In the US, the regulatory squeeze is more subtle but equally effective. It comes in the form of an ever-increasing burden of paperwork, compliance costs, and environmental regulations that are designed for massive corporate farms, but are crushing for small family operations. The EPA, the USDA, and various state agencies are creating a regulatory environment where only the biggest players can survive. A small farmer doesn't have a legal department. They don't have a compliance officer. Every new rule is a tax on their time and their thin margins. This is a classic barrier to entry strategy. Large corporations love complex regulations because it kills their smaller competition. They can absorb the costs, the family farm cannot. The result is the same as the Dutch model, just slower: the liquidation of the independent farmer. They are forced to sell out to the aggregators, the integrators, and the private equity firms. To make this policy palatable to the public, there has been a coordinated campaign to demonize farmers. For decades, the farmer was a cultural hero in the West, the provider, the steward of the land, the embodiment of hard work. Now, they are being rebranded as climate villains. We are told that cow farts are destroying the planet. We are told that traditional farming is unsustainable, cruel, and backwards. We are told that agriculture is a major contributor to greenhouse gases and must be radically transformed. This narrative is essential to the Starvation Protocol. You cannot get the public to support the destruction of their own food supply unless you first convince them that the people producing the food are the enemy. It creates a psychological separation between the consumer and the producer. The urban dweller, buying groceries in a sanitized supermarket, has no connection to the reality of food production. They are easily manipulated by slick campaigns promoting green alternatives, unaware that the cost of this transition is the destruction of rural communities and the food security of their nation. The war on farmers is a war on independence. A farmer who owns his land, grows his own food, and sells to his local community is beholden to no one. He is a free man. That freedom is a threat to a system that demands total dependence. If they are dismantling the old food system, what are they replacing it with? The answer lies in the billions of dollars of venture capital flowing into future of food technologies. The goal is to move food production out of the field and into the laboratory. It is the industrialization of biology itself. The most prominent example is lab-grown or cultivated meat. This is not plant-based burgers like Beyond Meat. This is actual animal tissue grown in massive steel bioreactors from stem cells. The narrative selling this is seductive. All the meat you want, with none of the animal suffering, none of the land use, and none of the methane emissions. It sounds like a utopia. Bill Gates, Richard Branson, and major meatpacking corporations like Tyson and Cargill are heavily invested in this space. They are betting that, in the near future, the majority of meat consumed by the masses will come from a factory, not a farm. Alongside lab-grown meat is the push for insect protein. We have all seen the memes about eating Z-bugs, but it is a serious policy push from global institutions. The World Economic Forum has repeatedly published articles promoting insects as a sustainable, high-protein alternative to traditional meat. The EU has approved several types of insects for human consumption. Massive cricket farms are being built in Canada and Europe, subsidized by government grants. Again, the argument is environmental efficiency. Crickets require far less feed, water, and land than cattle to produce the same amount of protein. But there is a deeper psychological game at play. It is an exercise in humiliation and compliance. To force a population that has historically eaten beef, pork, and chicken to eat crickets and mealworms is a display of power. It is a signal that the old ways of life are over, and you will accept whatever the new elite decides is sustainable for you. It creates a two-tier food system. Does anyone seriously believe that the billionaires meeting in Davos will be dining on cricket burgers? Of course not. They will continue to eat the finest Wagyu beef and organic produce from their private estates. The synthetic food agenda is for the masses. It is the fodder for the new serf class. The most dangerous aspect of this new food system is intellectual property. You cannot patent a cow. You cannot patent a heritage tomato seed that you saved from your garden. But you can patent a genetically modified cell line used to grow lab meat. You can patent the CRISPR gene editing process used to modify crops. You can patent the specific proprietary blend of synthetic nutrients used to feed the vat-grown sludge. This is the ultimate goal, the privatization of the very building blocks of life. If the world shifts to a diet of patented synthetic food, the corporations that hold those patents will have a level of power that no king or emperor in history ever dreamed of. They will be able to extract a royalty on every calorie consumed by the human race. Farmers will cease to exist. They will be replaced by biotechnicians working in corporate labs, following instructions from a central IP holder. Food production becomes entirely dependent on complex, high-tech supply chains for proprietary inputs. If the supply of the special nutrient broth from the central factory is cut off, the meat in the bioreactor dies. This is the opposite of food security. It is total, systemic fragility. It is a system designed for monopoly and extraction. And what about the health implications? We are told these new foods are safe, but they are fundamentally novel to the human diet. We have tens of thousands of years of evolutionary history eating animals and plants that grew outside in the sun and soil. We have zero long-term data on the effects of consuming lab-grown tissue bathed in fetal bovine serum and antibiotics, or genetically hyper-modified crops designed to withstand massive doses of pesticides. We are being treated as subjects in a massive, uncontrolled biological experiment. The rise in chronic illness, allergies, and autoimmune disorders in the West correlates perfectly with the industrialization and processing of our food supply over the last 50 years. Now, they want to take that industrialization to its ultimate extreme. The arrogance of thinking we can out-engineer nature is staggering. Every time humanity has tried to completely override natural systems with technological ones in agriculture, it has led to unforeseen consequences, from the Dust Bowl to dead zones in the oceans, from fertilizer runoff. What will be the unintended consequences of replacing natural farms with biological factories? We won't know until it is too late. The picture we have painted is grim. The land is being bought up. The independent farmers are being squeezed out. The food supply is being centralized and synthesized. The Starvation Protocol is not about immediate famine. It is about the slow, methodical construction of a system of total control. It is a system where you will eat what you are given, at the price they set, and you will have no alternatives. It is the end of food choice, and therefore the end of freedom. But the trap is not yet closed. There is still a window of opportunity to resist and build a parallel system. But it requires immediate, radical action from individuals. We cannot wait for politicians to save us. They are bought and paid for by the very interests pushing this agenda. The solution is not global, it is hyperlocal. It is about rebuilding the connections that have been severed. The first and most revolutionary act is to become a producer. You must stop being a 100% consumer of the corporate food system. This doesn't mean everyone needs to move to a farm. It means doing whatever you can, wherever you are. If you have a backyard, tear up the useless grass and plant a garden. Grow potatoes, carrots, tomatoes, calories that you control. If you live in an apartment, grow herbs on your windowsill. Join a community garden. Learn to bake your own bread. Learn to preserve food, canning, dehydrating, fermenting. These are lost skills that were common knowledge just 2 generations ago. They are skills of survival and independence. Every calorie you produce yourself is a calorie you don't have to beg for. It is an act of defiance against the centralization agenda. The second step is to use your money as a weapon. You must bypass the corporate grocery chains and support the remaining independent farmers directly. Find a local farmer's market and shop there religiously. Get to know the people who grow your food. Look them in the eye, shake their hand. Better yet, find a farmer who sells cow shares or herd shares. This is a legal arrangement where you buy a percentage of a live animal and the farmer cares for it and processes it for you. It is a way to bypass USDA regulations that favor industrial slaughterhouses and get high-quality, locally raised meat. Join a community-supported agriculture program where you subscribe to a farm's harvest up front. This gives the farmer the capital they need at the beginning of the season and guarantees you a share of the food. When you buy directly from a farmer, 100% of that money stays in your community. It helps that farmer keep their land. It fights the consolidation. Yes, it might cost more than the subsidized slop at the megamart, but you are paying for more than just food. You are paying for your future freedom. Finally, we need a fundamental shift in how we view food. We have been trained to view it as a cheap, disposable commodity. We demand avocados in winter and strawberries year-round. We want dinner to be effortless and instant. This mindset of convenience is what allowed the corporate takeover. We traded our independence for a microwave dinner. We need to treat food with the reverence it deserves. It is the fuel of life. Its production requires hard work, connection to nature, and respect for biological cycles. The Starvation Protocol depends on your ignorance and your passivity. It depends on you not knowing where your food comes from. It depends on you accepting whatever they put on the shelves. The moment you take responsibility for feeding yourself and your family, their power over you begins to evaporate. The elites are betting that you're too lazy, too distracted, and too comfortable to change. They are betting that you will eat the bugs, rent the pod, and accept the digital ID because it is the path of least resistance. Prove them wrong. Plant a seed. Shake a farmer's hand. Reclaim your sovereignty over the most essential aspect of your life. The war is on. It's time to choose a side. I'm Tom, and this is The Wealth Collapse. Subscribe now to stay ahead of the curve because when the history books are written, you'll want to be one of the few who saw it coming.